Hello everyone, welcome to Room and Board. My name's Chris George, and today we have another episode of Crowdfunding Countdown, or as I like to call it, another case of the Mondays. I can't tell you how long I had to search for a picture of Garfield in a Sherlock Holmes cap for that joke that isn't a joke. Seems like a joke. It's not actually a joke. Case of the Mondays, that's my... Okay, well let's move on. And it wasn't even that long, I just like to hyperbolize. But this was the first result, which makes me think that the internet hasn't recognized that Benedict Cumberbatch has ruined that character for everyone, and not even Andrew Garfield can save it. It's just a fact. The other fact is that neither of their performances will be better than this artistic interpretation of our favorite Monday feline. Anyway, first off, before we get into the games, shout out to my newest patron, Steven. And only Steven, thank you so much for jumping on board. Steven has made it very clear in previous comments that he was waiting to join Patreon until the exact week where he could be the only patron. And for some inexplicable reason, he seems to have cracked Al Gore's rhythm and made it to be so. So honestly, congratulations, Steven. This is a monumental achievement. Because normally every week I'm inundated with people throwing their support at me. They're saying, we know you spend too many hours on these stupid things and we love you. No, that's not true. The people loving me part, not the hours thing. But hey, I love you too. Thank you so much to Steven. Thank you to all of my patrons as always. Seriously, your support and continued support is touches me in ways that I could never tell a judge. And I just am very appreciative of you supporting the channel and getting to hang out with you all over on the Discord as well. I just have a great time over there, so thanks for sticking around. Unlike, you know, all father figures in my life. Moving on to the games for this week. This is a pretty light week. There isn't too much that's noteworthy that is on the docket, but there are a couple fun ones, for sure. And just because there aren't many interesting things doesn't mean I'm going to stop talking and hanging out with you all for, you know, however long this takes. However long I can draw it out with the small source material that I have. And so speaking of stretching this format to its very extinction level, first up, we don't have a board game. We don't even have an announcement that Backerkit has moved to crowdfunding and has crowdfunded things like tiny little bird bags that I guess $170,000 worth of people wanted, or Backerkit just paid it to make sure it went over the finish line to make sure that they could show that they could do an actual crowdfunding campaign. Who knows what conspiracy theory is going to happen there until Gloomhaven launches it off in their miniatures line. But at least it gives me something else to check for these Monday videos. No, it's not that. It's not that Splendor has announced a 2-player version of Splendor, which I always thought was better and best at the 2-player version anyway. No, it is... This is a tangential board game related thing. Sure, there's a term for that. A 5e 5th edition adventure scenario for 3rd to 5th level characters for experienced dungeon masters. That is the one-shot campaign, The Ballad of Sir Redmayne. And you know I don't cover RPG stuff, so why am I covering this one? Well, it is because it is by the creator, of course, the same genius who brought you Bad Boys and Wicked Women. And am I covering this just so I have an excuse to say bad boy over and over and over again, like the wicked bad boy that I am? Well, why don't we read this very real description to find out, which I have added no words to. Bad boy Sir Redmayne fell in a valiant battle with the bad boy orc foes. His bad boy horse was slain, and its magical armor and his ancestral sword were taken. Word has now reached his grieving wicked woman widow that bad boy Sir Redmayne's armor and sword are to be melted down in a foul ritual by the wicked women orc chieftains and their bad boy dark mages. I actually do think this seems like a cool campaign because, you know, the orcs actually think something different happened, and that's always cool to see what the real truth of the story is. So if you like 5th edition, hey, check it out. That's £7, 12 ounces Canadian for a PDF version. Yeah, the finish is tomorrow, Wednesday, June 22nd at 8:07 a.m. Now, next up we have a game called MicroCrime. It's not a macro crime city scenario, no. This is a roll and write where you will solve a crime according to the rulebook, or the snippet of the rulebook that they provide, based on proofs analysis, supposition, and creativity. Ah, yes. I have always wanted to creatively solve crimes. No, 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 no. That's not a blood splatter. That's just a child's finger painting project. And you just need to stop stifling his voice, Martha. And so what's great about this rulebook and this campaign is that it gives you barely anything to go off of. Other than you're going to keep on rolling dice and see what sort of crime has happened. I'll roll a 0 to 5, only one body. Roll 11 to 12. It's a carnage. What carnage? 3 bodies are everywhere. Just everywhere. And then it also puts itself forward as a roll and write, but then it puts itself forward as a board game, as an RPG, as a live action RPG, and as an escape room. It's great that it just gives you this rough outline. It says, have fun, it's only $1. And I mean, yeah, it's only $1, so if you're intrigued, it's a good racket to get a bunch of dollars. Basically, everything in your room is going to turn into the crime scene, and then you're going to roll to kind of fill in the blanks, and that's about as much as I can tell from what they've provided. It says you're going to explore the scene by walking around, moving through the scene, this murder scene that's now your house could be very peculiar and interesting. You could stumble upon the sad state of a man who was suffocated by Domino's pizza boxes. Or happy state. What a beautiful way to go, some might say, as the towering box of Domino's pizza boxes sits just off screen, rumbling, ready to strike. Side tangent story, because that seems like the sort of week that this is going to be. I was away, and this back when I was serving in a restaurant, so I had lots of tips. And then I went away, and I came back, and I thought, oh, I don't have any food in my fridge. I'm going to order some Domino's. So I ordered from Domino's, and the delivery person shows up, and they said, oh, hey, we haven't seen you in a while. And my only response was, oh, you know, summer. Because I was away for the summer. I couldn't tell them that the only reason why I had stopped ordering copious amounts of Domino's pizza, it was because I was away for the summer. And the moment that I got back, I then called the old faithful once again. It was truly a dark day. And truly a way for them to never receive my business again until a year later. And then I, started picking it up, so that I could, I guess, wear costumes, or hopefully the cashiers would rotate a little bit more than the delivery drivers. I think that was my hope. Anyway, if you're interested in MicroCrime, whatever it is only $1 to find out whatever it is. And that finishes June 23rd at 11:36 a.m. Next up, we have Academy of Arts, the new trading card game to hit the Kickstarters. That's right, battle it out in a 2-player head-to-head.
So it's just like Duel Monsters.
Yeah. Let's just get right to it. I have too much scorn for trading card games to be able to cover this effectively, I think. And most of that scorn comes from me having zero self-control. And I like to have a full game when I buy a game, not just a deck of cards that I'm going to look at another better deck of cards down the road in a couple months and think that my deck of cards, doesn't even work anymore. My deck of cards just sits at home eating Domino's pizza, and that deck of cards, well, it's moved on to Little Caesar stuffed crust. Although, to be fair, I blame my feeling of inadequacy because Martha never nurtured my creativity. So yeah, here's a trading card game. If you like them, go check them out. They say that this is a game that's easy to pick up and hard to put down, and I guess they put glue on the cards or something. I don't know, that's a bad joke. But this is $75 US or $98 Canadian for 3 decks. For 3 of the decks that you can play against each other. And, well, that seems a bit extreme. I mean, all trading card games seem a bit extreme to me. Cheapo McGee over here. But this still does seem a little bit extreme. But the art is beautiful, and they say, yeah, we called it Academy of Arts and not Magic Academy because we wanted to focus on the arts, and I think they wanted to focus on not getting copyright infringement for Magic the Gathering. But, you say potato, I say libel. If you're interested, check it out. That finishes Thursday the 23rd at 6:30 p.m. Now, next up, we have Aeon's End Past and Future Expansion. The Past and Future Expansion here to come to save us all from this meandering week of madness. This is the 7th wave of Aeon's End content, which is significantly better than the 7th wave of, COVID. That's what I think of whenever I hear the next wave. And so this is an expansion. Specifically, you need the New Age or the Outcast expansions or the sets of Aeon's End to play this particular game because it incorporates elements from those standalone sets. And those were waves 5 and 6, respectively. And the main mechanic that they're pushing here is that you have cards that you can swap with cards in the market. And this is actually a huge deal because it lets your deck stay streamlined and you don't have to get these additional gems and still rifle through your other gems. You can swap and upgrade up to these bigger gems, which allow you to purchase other bigger, badder spells more quickly. And that feels like it would be a fun change, but also, I just really like Aeon's End, and I think anything you get from Aeon's End is fairly good. But this one allows you to streamline it, so say goodbye to all of your other Aeon's End content. They're also pushing this forward as sort of a semi-narrative campaign. They have 15 decks that say stop on them, so you can go through these different chapters and unlock the new cards and play through a little bit of a story, which is cool. It's a really cool aspect to add to the game, and it's also completely unnecessary because the story in Aeon's End has never really been something that I've been compelled with. I've never been drawn into Aeon's End because I love the story. I don't really care who we're battling. I don't really care what mages I have. I don't know the history of it. I've just been like, yeah, I don't need to know. Because the system is what is fun to me. It's not necessarily the story. But I do like that sense of progression, and I think it's great that they're continuing to do that because it gives you these little chapters, and then you can just combine all the equipment and new stuff that you've gotten from it otherwise into all of your other games. So Aeon's End is fun, but it's also the 7th wave of Aeon's End. And if you already have 6 waves of Aeon's End, I doubt you really need this 7th one. You probably want it, but you really don't need it. Plus, ordering it now on Kickstarter, it costs $64 US, $84 Canadian, and then shipping is $20 US or $30 US to get to Canada, $20 to get it to the US. So for me, after conversion, that works to $122 Canadian to get it to my door, and I guarantee that even with the additional promos, because you always get like a little pack, a little extra expansion pack that usually sells for like 20 bucks Canadian, $18.94, I think, is the actual cost of 401 games. So even with the addition of that smaller pack, I don't think the cost evaluation is there for me personally. But if you are getting a bunch of Aeon's End stuff, the shipping will be cheaper. I just think Aeon's End is pretty popular and you can likely get it from larger channels as well. And you don't necessarily have to get it on the retail side of things. That being said, I'm still a huge fan of Aeon's End. I enjoy it. Every time I play it, I have a great time. And you can get previous other wave content and previous promos in this campaign, which is great. It's great that they offer it. Again, I think they offer it for a little bit higher price than what you'll probably get it when you're not paying for the shipping, but you know, it's still good. I'm glad it's doing well. I'm glad it's always popular, and I'm glad there's going to continually keep coming out with more stuff, even though it is completely unnecessary. And you know you have all the Aeons and you could ever need with those first 6 waves, or even the first like 3. But if you're interested, check it out. That's June 24th at 10:57 a.m. Now, next up, we have a little card game called Court. This is a trick-taking game for 3 to 5 players where your goal is to get the least amount of points. It's akin to hearts and spades. I don't know, I've never played spades, but I know hearts you don't want points. They say it's from spades. Hearsay, I suppose, on my part. But it's an interesting flow of the game because you play 3 rounds, and the first round you get your cards randomly, but whenever you win a trick, you then get to choose which cards go in front of another player. And these cards also contribute to that player's points, so they will get that many points at the end of the round. Remember, points are bad. And also, that will be the player's hand for the subsequent rounds. And so this is a really interesting mechanic to me, because if you're good at counting cards, you can know exactly what cards are in everybody's hands for the remaining rounds of the game and try to control the flow in that way. And also it's that trade-off of, okay, I'm giving you a lot of points now, but I'm also giving you control for the next couple rounds. And so I'm not sure how this is going to work. I'm not sure if it'll just bounce back and forth between people. I think that's the reason why you can't play it at 2 players, or you need that larger player count, because then it can be in flux. Feels a bit like everybody's just going to gang up on the leader though in the last round, so I'm not sure how that'll work. But there's also another cool mechanic where if you lose the trick, if you're the lowest card and that card has an ability on it, you get to activate that ability. And so those abilities are stuff like swap a card with your hand from something that's already like laid in front of you. And so there's ways to manipulate and change things up. It seems pretty fun. This one's going for $15 US or 20 bucks Canadian, and then it's $8 shipping to the US, 15 bucks shipping additional to Canada, which makes it you know, after conversion around $40 Canadian to get to my door. And for a deck of cards, that seems a bit steep, but I do like what they're doing here. And I'm intrigued by the mechanics, but I'm not that intrigued to pull the trigger. But if you're interested, check it out. That finishes June 24th at 10:30 p.m. Next up, we have a game called Crossroads Inn, where we get to meet Pietra, who is a board game designer, and who, as you can see, loves fantasy worlds. That's the line in the script. He's like, and you know, clearly I love fantasy worlds. Do you not see my floofy shirt? Can you not feast your eyes on my frilly little vest? Seems like I've walked into my fantasy world. What an introduction. And only goes to highlight my own, again, inadequacy, because I'll never look as good as that. I'll never become the king of the innkeepers like this, or just the king in general, because the premise of the game is that the land's in turmoil, the king's dead, as kings often are. That's their joke in the rulebook, it's not mine. I would never take credit for someone else's joke, unless, you know, I did it better. But the land needs to choose a new king, and so in order to choose a new king, they've sent all the prospective kings to attempt to run an inn and get the best, most flourishing inn. And whoever can get an inn, well then clearly you're fit to run the country, because the inn is a microcosm of the country. You're appealing to all of the, you know, the poorer people. Various adventurers of all different types and factions will visit this inn, and if you can get all of them on your side, then clearly you can win the regard of the people. At least I assume that's the reason why. They never actually specify. They're just like, and the rule of the kingdom is whoever can run the best inn. It's like you apply that to any game. Yes, you want to become the king of the land? Well, you gotta organize that library shelf the best, because kings are diligent with their ABCs. But this one seems fun, it seems fine. You start by drafting your 4 inn tiles, and you'll put them in the 4 corners of your inn. Your inn is basically comprised of this grid, and you want to fill it up with things that will benefit you and get you points. And you're getting points by, you know, getting all of your reputation levels to the maximum that they can go to. And so you're going to be purchasing new things to go into your inn by using money, basically just money. They said, we only have 2 resources in this game, money and information, because we were sick of it being money, stone, and wood. So we thought, yes, let's make a resource, information. And you can also use that resource of information to get gossip points, basically. And you can use those gossip tokens to gossip against someone else's inn. You can say, hey, listen, that guy's inn over there? Yeah, I hear their amethyst hen is really just purple painted rock pheasant, and, you know, really just ruin their chances at becoming king of the land with your hurtful words, Mortimer. The mechanic that seems the most interesting to me, that I think a lot of games deliberately keep out, is that on this reputation track, whenever you cross a certain threshold, you get a bonus of that faction, because every faction wants you to do different things. But if you lose reputation in that faction as well, and you cross the same bonus, you get the bonus again. And so I think there might be a fun play of manipulating the back and forth of specific factions, or it could just break the game entirely. I'm not too sure yet, but that seems fun to me. And I also like that there are different cards that are going to come out, different king's favors that designate who can sit where in your inn, basically. Like the laws of the land, that these people can't sit next to these people, which when you say it like that, it doesn't have as good of a ring to it as, you know, the king's favors and just the spatial puzzles. Let's get back to the spatial puzzle aspect of it. But yeah, that seems fun. And this is, you know what, it's a decent price point. It's 40 euros or $55 Canadian. You're not getting bells and whistles with it. You're just getting what I think is going to be a decently interesting Euro game, which after the shipping, again, it puts it in that higher threshold. And so you have to measure it against all the other, you know, pretty decent Euro games out there that you can get at retail for potentially cheaper. I do love a few of their add-ons, though. In their deluxe tier, you can get a copper mug or whatever. My favorite part is you can get this cookbook, because part of the game is by using these new illustrious recipes, you can get more patrons to your tavern because they're interested in trying your illustrious recipes. And the fact that they have a little cookbook associated with that, I think is just fun. Although I don't think I am interested in trying to make the fiery meat cigarettes, as one of the cards puts out. I mean, this is also the point where they do say that the recipes act as the ketchup mechanic. And I want to pull out a bottle of ketchup right now, as I say ketchup mechanic, and just spray it all over the place. But luckily for my face, were out. Although now I fear that could become an ongoing bit that is definitely not worth it, and worth the cleaning bills of the ketchup all over my carpets, and yet it will be happening down the line. It's a good thing I hit play, and then I remember my props list that I was supposed to get, and then by that time I'm already filming. Anyway, if you are interested in that, check it out. That finishes June 5th at 9:40 a.m. Next up, we have Takure, from the famed team that brought you the Yokai Quest rulebook. Under a new name on Kickstarter. This is their first project created on Kickstarter, but they make sure to really highlight that they also were behind the Yokai Quest rulebook, which, if you are new to these crowdfunding countdowns, you may not remember. Way back, we covered a game called Yokai Quest. It was like $20. You could buy the rulebook, or you could buy the game without the rulebook. I feel like I am also ineligible to cover this title because of how this has biased me against someone who would openly say, oh yeah, listen, we were the geniuses behind selling the rulebook at a different level. I know it was a reprint, but if it's a reprint and you have previous people who purchased your product, why would you not give them the rulebook? We don't have to rehash this. And just as we don't even need to hash this futuristic rugby team versus team game, because you know, if Yokai Quest rulebook is any example, I will also find this dumb and overpriced. Sorry. It's not as overpriced as I expected it to be. It's not Yokai Quest levels, but the base game is €69, $95 Canadian, or you can now add new teams to play with for an additional €49, $64 Canadian. And considering these teams are just like 4 minis, yeah, that does feel pretty expensive. 6 minis with the stretch goals, I should say. And it also has my least favorite mechanic of all time, measurement movement, or at least using a measurement ruler to measure the length of some throws, which honestly sounds cool and thematic in terms of like a rugby sports game, to have to determine how much you can throw, eyeballing it, representing how you would have to determine that on a rugby field, or if you were throwing a ball, you just have to feel it, right? Just as these futuristic rugby players will have to feel out throwing their rug full of bees, as I assume that is what is thrown in this world. Anyway, if you like those sorts of things, I'm thrilled for you, then you should check it out. That finishes June 26th at 4 p.m, and maybe you'll love it. Now, next up we have a game called This Didn't Happen, where we got to fiddle with history to unearth that big lizard. And if that quote sounds familiar, and it should, then you might recognize this from way back in the January 25th crowdfunding countdown. Yes, thank goodness I created that crowdfunding countdown master list that is in the description of all these crowdfunding countdowns. If you're interested in checking out a previous campaign or cross-referencing if a campaign has been completed, we are almost at a year of crowdfunding countdowns, and it's pretty cool to go back and look at. And it's also great for me because then I can just say, hey, go watch that segment because nothing has changed. Or I can watch past Chris and think, gosh, you must be funnier now, right? And then in 6 months, I'll watch past Chris and think the same thing. But the basic premise is you're gonna have these 3 timelines of cards, and your time machine is always going to move forward on these timelines towards the impending disaster, and you can catch up to the time machine and then transport yourself backwards and get resources and try to basically flip cards. You're going to need to flip all these different cards and searching for the ones that will stop the apocalypse. You know, search for the clues, essentially. And it looks okay. I mean, it looked okay back then. I guess it didn't fund because they canceled. I'm glad that they have funded now. I'm thrilled for them, but at $34 Canadian plus another $15 in shipping, it just seems a little bit much for that kind of lighter card game that it appears to be. It's not one that I'm particularly interested in, but if you are interested, check it out. That finishes June 27th, next Monday at 10:27 a.m. Anyway, our second last campaign of the week, our last game of the week, is a game called Heroes and Wizards. And this is a pretty light card game. You're going to get 3 cards dealt into your hand. They're going to be a variety of things, and you can choose to draw a card randomly from the top of the pile, or play a card and activate its effect or put it into your party. And basically the game is get a number of symbols and the correct quest in your hand that matches up with those symbols, and then you win the game. You're like, hey, I went on this awesome quest with my party of heroes, and what did you do? Nothing. You did nothing. And that's the game, and then you can play cards that have abilities like, swap people's cards, or hey, everyone's gonna swap their hands to the left now. Stuff like that. These sorts of games don't really interest me that much because I don't like lighter games, and I feel like this is pretty light, but it's an okay price point. It's $20 US, $25 Canadian. I mean, it would be better if it was the $15 US mark, honestly. But if you like that lighter sort of style, you might want to check it out. I think this one does stand out in the number of small decisions you make in this genre. It's still not enough to make it necessarily interesting to me, but I think it might be enough to kind of flesh out this game so that it doesn't feel like every other light card game that's out there. Anyway, that finishes next Tuesday, June 28th at 7 p.m. And finally, we arrive at our last campaign of the week, the Bristol Table by Geeknson over on Gamefound. And for just the low price of £1,000 or $1,673 Canadian, pending conversion, you can get yourself a table. And this is an expensive purchase, but this is not as expensive, I really should point out, as anything else Geeknson is offering on their website, which I looked at and I almost had a heart attack at the prices, with the Dennis starting at £3,550 all the way up to the Virgo, which I knew there was a reason I hated Virgos, those pretentious pieces of garbage. My brother's a Virgo. Sorry, Wes. And the Virgo starts at £8,990. Doesn't have the dimensions on it. The base model of the Dennis, those sizes, 100 centimeters by 150. It's comparable to the medium 100 centimeters by 150. That is being highlighted on the Gamefound campaign. That's the one that'll cost £1,000. Anyway, the Virgo doesn't have the dimensions, because if you're gonna pay what is, pretty much a year's rent for me just on a table, well, you don't need to know how big it is, you plebeian. You just need to know that it sits 6, and yes, of course, you're gonna have a designated room for it, so just stick it in there and enjoy. No. Personally, I still don't know how I feel about gaming tables. I mean, I get it, they're very nice, but especially since Geeknson hasn't yet given me a referral code so I can sell out and start making commissions off of all of you, then currently I can keep my opinion that gaming tables are not necessary. I mean, I think I have the best and cheapest gaming table right here, the IKEA Norden or Gate Leg or whatever it is. That's a video that I want to make. I want to say, I found the cheapest board gaming table, and it's actually cheap, instead of somebody saying, oh, I've got the cheapest board game table for you, and it's still $1,000. Around $100, baby. That's the room and board way. I also now want to reach out to IKEA and be like, hey, develop some really cheap gaming tables. There's probably a market. Maybe we could get a room and board partnership going. I will not, however, reach out to the room and board furniture store that I have over double their subscribers. I have about double their subscribers, and yet still comes up first in some of the search results on YouTube when you search room and board. How dare you? Anyway, if you are interested in purchasing a gaming table, well then you have until next week at 3 p.m. Tuesday, June 28th to decide. Yeah, that's right. If you have been contemplating a gaming table, you just make that decision in 1 week. Really spend all that money not researching your options and just do it in 1 week. That's my advice. Anyway, that's it. That's it for a weird, silly week. There's also a Dungeons and Lasers campaign finishing up next Tuesday over on Gamefound, where you can get a bunch of terrain for your D&D sets. And I was going to look at it because I've heard the name Dungeons and Lasers, and I've heard that they do decent quality stuff. And then I saw that the base pledge was like $125 Canadian, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to shout at people over and over about that, when they could just, again, get a Norden gate leg table that you can fold and put away. It could be just like a little bit bigger if we're harping on things. The table could just be a tiny bit bigger, but it's still pretty good. You can fit a lot of games on it. Anyway, every week I do a pick for me and a pick for you. Pick for me being the one that I'm the most interested in, and the pick for you being the one that you should buy so then we can play it together. I don't have to spend my money on it, you fool. And the pick for me this week, it's going to be Court. I think it's going to be Court, and it's going to be Court just because I like trick-taking games and I'm interested in trying it out. I'm not going to get it. It's, I think, too expensive for just a deck of cards, but I think that they're doing innovative things with the genre, and since I grew up on bridge and on trick-taking stuff, I'm always interested to try out these different variations and see how well they work. So that's my pick for me. I think that is the one I am the most interested in. Crossroads Inn, I was kind of interested in, but it was more, again, the reasonable price point on Kickstarter that made me perk up, and not necessarily any of the mechanics in it. And then Aeon's End, it's an expansion, so I don't have the base, so but I mean, my friend Zach has basically everything. Because he has basically everything, and I play it infrequently, I don't think you need 7 waves of content. So that brings me to the pick for you, which is nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing this week. It could be go out and get Aeon's End 2nd edition. You know what my pick of the week is for you? I mean, I've harped on this a lot. I'm gonna give 2 picks of the week for 2 affordable games. One that I do have, Letter Jam by CGE. I wanted to pick up a copy of this for a little bit, and you know, spoiler alert to the Origins haul video that inevitably will be coming. I got this at Origins, the team from CGE. My old Codenames partner Tony hooked me up with this copy, and I'm thrilled to own it. And I think it is an awesome, fun game. It's Hanabi meets a word game. I really enjoy both of those things. That's why I like it. And then the other one, which I didn't end up picking up for Origins because all of my friends did, is Night of the Ninja by Brotherwise Games. Again, a really fun social deduction game. And these are both sitting around that $20 Canadian price point. So if you're aching, if you're desperate to spend money on something, then I think, you know, those 2 are really decent options. And specifically affordable, which, you know, I try to do. Anyway, that's it. Let me know what you are excited for upcoming. There are going to be quite a few neat things coming up in the future that I am excited to talk about. I think every campaign I've heard of that looks interesting is going to drop on like July 19th. So keep that day in your calendars. But for this week, no pick for you. Nothing. Keep that money in your wallet and spend it on Domino's Pizza. Tell them I sent you. They know me at every location across the world. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Let me know what you are excited for upcoming and what you have gotten recently, or, you know, just drop a comment for the algorithm because I hear it likes that sort of thing. Again, my name's Chris George, and I don't have a catchphrase. But in honor of the Virgo table, thanks for tuning into Room and Board, where my hot takes are full of love to pay for rent. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I know it is an expression. And I feel like it's provocative. Or maybe insightful. Who knows?